Volkswagen's Polo has been in South Africa in one form or another since the 90s, and now in its third generation it's given us a GTI, a very efficient Blue Motion, a quasi 4x4, and the very efficient Vivo. And it's also gained enough followers to become South Africa's favourite car. According to the February 2015 sales figures, VW sold in excess of 4,500 Polos. Over half of those were one of these. To put that into some kind of perspective, it means that VW sold more Polo Vivos than Nissan sold cars across their entire range in the same month. It's also 3 times as many as its nearest rival, the Ford Figo. And that for me raises an interesting question, because the Figo and the Vivo have essentially got the same spec, but the Figo has got more power and it's 10 grand cheaper. And in this corner of the market, that's not an insubstantial amount of money. So, what makes all those fleet buyers and rental companies and private drivers love this car so much that they want to spend that extra money? It's not like Ford has a bad rep when it comes to service and reliability and resale, and there's certainly not a lot of extra value in this facelifted version of the Vivo. In fact, unless the changes are specifically pointed out to you, it's almost impossible to tell that it's been facelifted at all. New headlights, new grille with some chrome bits, and depending on which version you choose, extra color-coded pieces. Nothing that you'd describe as game-changing or even mildly exciting. No change at the rear either, unfortunately. It still features taillight clusters that look like they were redesigned in a hurry to meet the company's corporate styling guidelines, a little incongruous and aftermarket looking. Overall, it's nice enough though, even if it is now a dated design. If its looks haven't convinced you yet, they never will. And it's the same in here. No sweeping changes, just a few additions across the range, like a fake leather gear shift and a new instrument cluster. Depending on which spec you go for, you could get niceties like a height-adjustable driver's seat and an audio system with Bluetooth. But no matter which model you go for, you'll get an interior that just works. VW are very good at putting together interiors that have a great combination of good materials, solid build, and ergonomics that are spot on. The color schemes can tend to be a little on the monochromatic side, but in terms of usability, it's just about perfect. Space in the little car is good as well, with decent room all round and a boot that's good enough for everyday needs. Some people might moan about its lack of a split rear bench seat, but in the grand scheme of things, that's hardly a shortcoming. So, a few changes outside, a few changes inside, but absolutely nothing under the bonnet. The new Polo might get a modern 1200 motor, but the Vivo sticks with the original lineup, which is a 1400 or a 1600, both with 2 tuning options, and a 5-speed manual as standard. We're driving the higher output 77 kilowatt version, which Volkswagen says will get by on 6.6 litres per 100 Ks. Without having done an official test, it does seem like this engine, old school though it may be, does have fuel efficiency as one of its strengths. Our pure town driving time with a test car averaged around 7 litres per 100 Ks. There's not one thing that stands out in the drive of this car. It doesn't have superb power or great steering or a perfect chassis. But it is very balanced, with every part working together to make sure that this is a very good drive. It's all very solid and nice to use. It may be an older VW, but it still feels as reassuring as any other. As much as there's nothing else you could point to as remarkable in this car, there's also nothing in the drive you could point to as subpar, or anything that tells you it's a budget car. It may be a budget car, but that doesn't mean you can't add some comforting extras. For 10 grand extra, our test car's got cruise control and leather seats. Granted, that is about the full extent of the options list, but they definitely add something. And I'm starting to understand just why this car is so popular. The only things that could possibly be seen as shortcomings are really minor. The steering could do with more assistance at low speed, and the Bluetooth setup isn't the most intuitive or the most user-friendly ever fitted to a car. But when you take away those extras and cover up the VW badge and look at this car on its merits, it has a certain charm. It's one of those honest little cars that doesn't rely on its budget label to impress. It may not be the most cutting-edge thing on the market, but it does what it does very well. Our test car featured the 77 kilowatt version of VW's tried and tested 1600 petrol. It has a consistent power delivery and decent real-world fuel consumption. The Polo Vivo delivers a good, reassuring drive despite its budget label. Its shortcoming is hardly major. Low-speed steering could do with more assistance.